Well, like a lot of our films, this took years and years and years to make. This actually started in, when did it start? 97. Started writing down notes and adding more and more ideas to it, and then in, let's say, 99, when we were all finishing up Toy Story 2, I wrote the first draft of the script. And in less than a year, we got it up on story reels real quickly, and it's been pounding away seriously ever since.
Why clownfish?
Why did they pick clownfish?
They have great personality, they're funny. Clownfish, I think probably picked them because they have this great relationship with the anemone where they don't really come out of the anemone very much. They stay safe within it, and yet are really colorful. So I'm just speaking for you now. That maybe that was wise, because someone who is trapped sort of in the real world has to leave and go on the big journey.
You are correct, sir.
Oh, ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, actually, I knew nothing about clownfish. I knew nothing about fish in general. But I knew the ocean would be cool, and I really wanted to see that world. I wanted to do a father-son story, and so I had to start looking at books. I had to pick a fish, and I opened up this one book at one point, and there was these two little orange fish, just the most appealing fish, and I wanted to know what was going on. I wanted to find out all the things that Mr. Peterson explained to us, and so that's perfect for this homebody father who's overprotective and looking out to make sure his son's not hurt at all, and they stay close to that one spot. That is their home for their life. It really kind of helps contrast the journey he has to take in this movie. So the ocean was really the metaphor for me for the story. It was perfect because I remember as a kid when under the water just staring out at what I would call the void. I mean, just the water would just drop off and merge out, and anything could be out there. And I just thought, wow, the duality of that line. Anything could be out there. It can be a negative thing or it can be a positive thing. And that was exactly what I needed for this movie. I mean, this movie is about the battle of hope versus fear. It's optimism versus pessimism. It's half full versus half empty. And that's exactly the issue for Marlon, for the main character. You can either hide from life or you can just enter it and take your chances and engage.
It's definitely tricky, the tragic nature of the opening of the film, just making it powerful, yet not overly brutal. It was a tough thing to get to. It's a very trying experience for father right out of the gate in this movie.
Yeah, you needed to bond these guys in a manner that kind of amplified the commitment that I hope every parent feels when their child's born. Is that I will do everything. I will die for this little guy. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure he's okay. We went to an extreme for that commitment, but we need to feel something how born it is that I will do everything. I will die for this little guy. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure he's okay. And we went to an extreme for that commitment, but we needed it for this kind of movie. And also just the vulnerability aspect, amplifying how vulnerable and innocent and particularly feel your children are when they're first born. And I think there's anything more moving than just finding this one place and still kind of saying, we actually had flashbacks years earlier, the flashbacks. And we were going to dole out this whole backstory. We just going to tell a little bit at a time. Just started making it now. We actually had that structure for a very long time. Yeah, where we never really quite knew how Nemo's family was why father was so protective. And maybe just kind of that little quick images there, iconic images that all kind of came together very well. On one level, that was fascinating because you did ask questions like why and why more, and you get these little windows of the past and of mom, and it was all leading up to this tragic event with Barracuda. And ultimately, what made it fall apart was there was nothing big to reveal again. There was no aha or surprise slant to it that made you see it the way that you didn't suspect it was going. By the time you were getting it in, you kind of suspected what the tragedy was, and sure enough, it was exactly what you thought it was. And so the only other option was either gratuitously put in an aha surprise. You thought it was red, but now it's blue, or just remove the flashbacks and tell it right up front, which almost every film on one book tells you to do. I was ignoring that.
A lot of times they keep spinning. You had 3 storylines that you showed us in the flashbacks, father doing, and also Nemo. It was hanging between each other.
Well, the other thing, one of the tricky things in this film is that because we're telling two kind of completely separate storylines, the story of father searching for Nemo and the story of Nemo going on in the tank, it was very difficult to find a nice balance between the two of those so that we could kind of maintain interest and energy in both storylines and be able to jump back and forth between the two. And that was hard enough on its own, but then to introduce this whole idea of these flashbacks that was just, just a whole other element that was kind of trying to derail the train. And by taking this out, the promise we had with Nemo.
I mean, even on basic terms, you're not telling 2 stories, it's like 3. You're telling 1. But I knew the ocean would be cool. I really wanted to see that world do a father-son story, and so I had to start looking at books. I had to pick a fish, and I opened up this one book at one point, and there was these two little orange fish with white stripes peeking out of what is now, I understand, an anemone.
That's anemone, not an anemone.
Thanks, Leon Fritch, good record.
And then we had to technically figure out how to simulate an anemone. And what were some of the tests that we had to do?
The anemone tendrils you see in the test really just are Sully's hair. The hairs are fatter, they're a different color, they're tapered at the end, and they're being pulled up instead of pushed down by gravity, and they're waving around. Other than that, it's really just hair. The final anemone was much more complicated than that. Each tendril is really a cloth sac. There's a lot more control over how they move, and of course they look completely different. The tendrils getting out of the way of the little ball as it goes through is an automatic thing. Nobody had to animate that. The simulation just does that. Most of the time, once you get it set up, that works pretty well, but sometimes, well, I really don't want this tendril here, I'd have to get out of the way.
There were definitely some situations where the tendrils around the characters didn't do the right thing just out of the simulation. So Cameron Miyazaki, one of our new guys, we gave him the challenge of animating the tendrils. He animated them beautifully well, and that's what you see in the film today. 99% simulation and 1% animation.
A lot of people ask why did he have a bad little fin, and it used to be a stronger story point, and I had the option of taking it out because he was going to learn to swim better through the movie, and we ended up not having to do that. But I ended up thinking it was somewhat symbolic of whatever that little thing is that we all have in our kids that we worry is not up to snuff to manage in the world, whether it's their education, their physical ability, their talents, their speech, whatever. There's always something that's like a mirror to you, like, am I a bad parent, or my kid's not going to be able to handle life without me? And I just thought it was such a great physical, obvious little trait of that paranoia that a parent has that I kept it in. I could go on and on and on about the lighting of this movie. It is just stunning and beyond words.
So, like the reef, it takes probably about 10 broad lights, but then when you add the characters, it could take up to 100 or more. There's a key light, which is kind of an overall bright light that determines the direction of the light. There'll be the caustic light, the dancing light on the ground that's coming through the water. There's also a bounce light, usually from the sand. It's kind of a low-level bounce coming back up onto your props and fish. There'll be an overall kind of bluish fill. There's the murk and the fog lights. And when you put all those together, you get this gorgeous-looking reef.
Well, we can't get too far into this movie and not talk about Albert Brooks. He just absolutely set these pictures. It was exactly what I needed. This thought of he needed somebody that was neurotic, overprotective, but still appealing throughout. And that is one of Albert's gifts, is that he can sort of play both. Usually it's very off-putting, but he just makes it so winning. And it's just absolute honor to work with. The bad joke teller, that was actually something that we came up with on the fly during the rewrite, and that was something that Albert Brooks just ran with. He definitely ran with the deconstruction idea of the joke, that this is a clownfish, that everyone assumes is, it's fine for you to clown clownfish, and yet this guy can't tell a joke to save his life. He was really good at how to tell a joke wrong. Yeah. Albert was like the authority on that. Yeah, you can tell he's a jokeologist, but he knows how to do it. You've got literally an hour of Albert telling this joke literally badly. And the voice of Nemo, we should mention, is Alexander Gould. The child actor, he doesn't sound like one. And Alexander was just a real deal. He just sounded genuine, and gave Nemo the sweet innocence, and we were just lucky to find him. Sheldon the Seahorse is played by Eric Sullivan, who is the child star in Sighthouse Rules and Kingdom of Destiny. Pearl is the octopus. She's played by She played the old woman in Pearl. No, she's an upcoming child actress. Very talented. And then there's Tad, who's the yellowfish. He's played by Jordy Rant, who is actually the son of Joe Rant, who works at Pixar movie. As the voice of Easy to Squeeze the Penguin. So here's the big star of the movie. Bob Peterson is Mr. Ray. We have Mr. Ray right here in the studio with us right now.
Oh, Andrew is such a good director. And now I'm going to rhyme with the word director, but later I'll write it down. And I'll come and I'll be your clown.
Wow, you may want to do that one over. That one's going to make the desk.
I was leaving for singing like that.
One of the animators, Brett Parker, was given the idea of a casket to animate all of those pigs sitting on Mr. Ray's back. She did an amazing job. They're just incredibly cute in every single shot. She just kind of this little green back peeking over.
Mr. Ray, going back to Mr. Ray, we did a rewrite. That was your idea. Just to give everything around Nemo this life, they had this wacky science teacher, and John Lasseter also was into that. Just a science teacher that was really crazy. Just someone who would show Nemo the wonders of the place in a funny way.
Yeah, there was always that one teacher that just seemed to love their subject matter to the point of ad nauseam. Yeah, and that you thought they were so geeky for like that much. Yeah. It was sort of Tom Lehrer of narrative.
Yeah, seeing it through
And then we just try to make the in a short little moment the most beautiful. We just wanted to be paradise. We wanted to keep all the potential that life can be an optimistic way for Nemo. And this is the way that Father has denied himself giving us homework of seeing what the world can do. We used to have a whole protracted sequence right before this landing where Father was kind of zipping around through the reef, trying to catch up with Nemo and being absolutely completely scared of every little thing.
Back on A Bug's Life, we discovered that presenting nature on screen meant simplification. We went diving, and we discovered that a coral reef could be broken down into 3 simple ideas. Tall vertical things, big flat horizontal things, and round masses. So if you ignore the ground plane and the ceiling that is the ocean surface, you could have a 3-dimensional environment where you had those 3 ideas that you could present to an audience. That was our formula for constructing the coral.
It stemmed from wanting to contrast how just open and adventurous Nemo in the class was compared to Father who'd stop at every red light or every sort of fish crossing. But we decided we didn't need to illustrate overprotective models. I just totally got it. One of the oldest images I always had was just this kid arriving at the very edge of the coral reef where it just stops and goes into the open water. Sort of evoked, for me as a little kid, it was like going to water with goggles and being in a pool and see where the deep end just starts to slope off, and it used to just spook the heck out of me. So I really want to try to evoke that. It's also so cool about the sudden intrusion of the real world, of the cubes, into this idea of space. It's just completely unexpected and sort of shocking. I love that.
It helps to have kids when you're doing the this. There's so much to draw from, just the dialogue and behavior and just your own feelings. Like you're talking about walking to work or walking on the street with Ben and how you felt, and definitely there's an endless well to draw from.
And it's interesting that we all started at Pixar, none of us had kids, and it's like we all have big families now. And it wasn't until I had kids that I really was amazed by the sort of the dual feeling of being my father's son and my son's father, and just really being very well being able to straddle both of those points of view, and that really helps to form this movie.
My son was about 5, so this would have been about 98, I think. And I had not seen him a lot because of a lot of work on Bugs Life, and so I wanted to spend some time with him. So I said, let's go take a walk. And so my little 5-year-old and we went out, and we were just going to walk down about 2 blocks to the park. And I thought, oh, some father-son time. And I spent the whole walk just going, stay away from the curb. Don't touch that. You don't know where that's been. Oh, careful from that. Oh, there's a car. Oh, be careful of that branch. And I just spent the whole time correcting him and overprotective and making sure he didn't get hurt. And I just remember this other part of myself, watching myself going, you are just losing every opportunity. You're just missing out right now on being present with your son. And I couldn't stop thinking about that. And I thought, geez, here I am just wanting so badly to be a good father, yet I'm not achieving that. And so I thought, what a ironic dilemma. I thought, fear can deny a good father from being one. And that intrigued me. And that became the missing link to putting all the pieces together for what ultimately became Finding Nemo.
Trouble, young man. Do you hear me?
That's pretty scary.
Yeah, I always thought, it's just not that I've experienced. I had never scuba dived when I came up with this scene. I just thought, from a fish's scale, this must be the most intimidating Godzilla moment ever. So
it's the opposite of Jaws.
Yeah,
what you've said.
Yeah, exactly. That's how I used to always pitch it. It's like it's man after fish, and then we go, "Come on, Nemo, just keep swimming. Don't look back." It's an intense moment. We had to walk a fine tightrope about basically this little kid being taken out of the ocean, and that's a traumatic thing. I think it's intense for little kids to experience, although it's sort of a fear that they gravitate towards in children's stories, because it's something that they do think about a lot.
It's the fear of being separated.
Yeah, right. And it's a fear from the parental side, and so it's uncomfortable on both edges. But I needed something that would just resonate for the entire picture, so that the payoff at the end would be so satisfying that I was willing to risk doing this kind of a thing. It just kind of is the catalyst for the entire rest of the movie.
It helps me to find out that this monster that kidnapped him is this goofy dentist.
Right, and that he thought he was doing something good. Again, that services the damaged fin aspect. He sees this little fish swimming all bizarrely and thinks he's going to save this thing from never surviving out in the wild. So this moment here with Nemo kidnapped her father, lost and distraught, this moment's always worked, and it's always worked for me even from the earliest pitches. As a matter of fact, there was a point when I didn't have anything to show for the movie, and all I could do was pitch it to, I had to present it to like 900 licensees, marketers at the El Capitan Theater, and I could tell then I had them just from this moment. Dory. I'm sure I will say this just because I'm a stupid male. And then I was in the middle of writing something in my bedroom, my wife had the TV on, and she was on the Ellen DeGeneres show, so I was back to changed subject 5 times before one sentence had finished. And it was so funny. Yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's how you play the movie. And then I couldn't stop thinking about doing it ever since then. And I remember calling her after she read sent the script. And I said to her basically, I am just so upset that you don't do this. And she's like, okay. It was that simple. It's really nice. And she turns out she is Dory. She is just as sweet, just as kind, and just as forgetful. She'll tell you that herself. She's a defender of Dory's character too. I remember a few times we gave Dory a few lines.
I saw with that little fish and sensing how much light went
So that was one of the first things I sort of did. So you make that.
What makes fish look so different from just plastic is that there's several layers working together with light to create display.
And for a long time, we didn't have a for it, or used for it. And finally, I was just like, it's like gummy bears. It's like when you put the gummy bears and put light. And so it ended up becoming just called the gummy.
Finding Nemo, their illumination is probably 80% is gummy substance in them, and then we just augment the surface lighting to get it to look like, they've got some sort of surface on top of all that so you can read their face. Because if they're too gummy, then you can't see any detail, you can't read any expression. So it's like finding that right balance to get them to look like they're both glowy and readable at the same time.
This was a big challenge coming this idea for this movie for me, to structurally separate father and son, and I really didn't want them to be connected back until the very end of the picture. I just thought, if I can make that work, it will just feel so strong for having seen their changes and then get them back at the end. But the tough thing is, well, if the issue is between the two of them, how do you make them change with them separated? And so some of the major key ingredients were coming up with a surrogate child for father and a surrogate parent for Nemo. And Dory, just having short-term memory and being this kind soul, just allowed her to play the innocence and semi-ignorance of a child that that father needed to test all the parental aspects that were his problem.
And she was flawed enough that he had to, in a way, take care of her as they went, which was
To create, to model, to design, to come up with, to voice, to animate. It was just, all the guys were in boy heaven with all these three sharks.
sharks and subs and things that go up. Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Jim Capobianco, one of our story guys, actually was the guy that really came up with placing this all in a sub. The original idea for the sharks was actually that they had their meetings sort of in the area of the wrecks where the minefields were, and they actually, for recreation after the meeting, would play volleyball with active sea mines. I just figured they were just built-in thrill seekers because of the species that they were. And they just didn't mind the adrenaline rush of the explosions. But it kind of was a prolonged sequence that didn't have as much momentum as I hoped it would. James said, why don't you have a chase inside the sub? And we were all like, wouldn't that be cool? Yeah, and I said, there's no way we can do it. No.
Think of dolphins. Dolphins? Yeah, I think they're so cute. Oh, look at me, I'm a flip, a little dolphin. Let me flip for you, I know something. Right then, today's meeting is...
Bruce, leader of the Sharks. He's voiced by Barry Humphries. He's probably most famous for his female character, Dame Edna. A lot of people don't know, but he's like the Robin Williams of Australia. He can do all sorts of characters. He's been doing it for decades. And he can just do this great, really heavy outback Aussie for Bruce, and it was great.
If you listen to that deep voice, you would never in a million years guess Dame Edna
I know.
was back in there. He's so versatile.
I also had a rule for Australian, which was, I didn't want everybody to be Australian, even though it was in the Great Barrier Reef. I thought once you got out to the reef, it could be international, and once the fish were in the tank, who knows where they were bought from. And stuck with having an entire Australian cast. It's very difficult to do when you're in the United States. Aussies playing the voices, it just gives it that authenticity it needs. And I even promised Barry Humphries that, he asked me, there's not going to be any fake Australian in this movie. And I said, no, I promise you. And sure enough, everybody in it is the real deal that speaks Australian.
It's one of the embarrassing things about doing scratch voices that we try to do Australian and then have to show it to these wonderful actors, and it's just like, please ignore that. One thing that was tough, at one point Dory actually got cut by a tooth. I was bleeding, and I put my thinking cap on. What's the funniest way that you can actually let go bodily fluids like blood without, being too gross? And getting clapped in the nose is the one that seems to be the funniest.
Help make it a little innocuous. Because I think that's the first time we've put blood ever in a CG movie.
Right.
Let go of bodily fluids.
Important feeling of underwater, especially like World War II ships that end up at the bottom of the ocean, is that they rust and they decay.
smacking in of a huge great white shark into a door would release a bunch of sort of rust particles, silt, which would settle onto that stuff, would get knocked up, and the water would get a lot murkier locally in the area, and then you see the silt kind of puff up and then settle back out. The key thing about doing silt and making it believable really has to do not so much with how it gets kicked up. Dust also responds on top of your refrigerator. You smack top of the fridge, dust will kick up in the air. It has to do with how it settles out. And things slow down a lot faster in water. Water is way more viscous than air, as people know. And so when Bruce the shark knocks silt off a door or off the ground or something, as it is ejected into the water around him, it sort of flies in quickly, but then immediately slows down, is eased out by the water, and then gently settles out due to gravity. But once it's in the air, Bruce's tail then sort of swims by and kicks it. It also reacts to that as well. Keeping track of all those dynamic interactions underwater is quite difficult to do. We spent a lot of time and attention to make that look believable. And when it's done right in a shot, suddenly that adds a whole different additional level of believability to being underwater, which is a key story point in the film.
Hanging by the tank that showed when Darla was going to be showing up. Yeah. And we finally thought, what better way to remind the audience that this evil little girl was coming rather than to get a photo of her sitting right there next to the tank, looming over every single scene in the film.
With broken glass.
But, Darla is so fun because actually we named Darla after Darla K. Anderson, who is the producer of Monsters and Ghostlight. As an homage.
What did you think when you found out that a character had been named after you?
I think it's great. It's a little bit of a mixed bag because she's kind of, is it the word villain? I have played a million practical jokes on Mr. Andrew Stanton, and I think it's just his way of getting me back.
So this is where the story gets. Meanwhile, back in the submarine.
Bob came up with another great line for Dory's kind of sleep mumblings. It didn't make it into the film, but I truly think it's the most bizarre thing that's ever been written down on a piece of paper. And the line was,
oh, and we should probably talk about the Sea Monkey Has My Money. Depending on your age, we're all in our 30s into our 40s, and we, you remember all those Kurt Russell movies, Walt Disney movies with the computer that wore tennis shoes and the world's greatest athlete. They all had Joe Flynn in them as the villain or something. And no phone calls, no interruptions, no other meetings, and we were able to just be a writing team and just talk out scenes and just really flesh out ideas or solve story problems. And this was one of them. We needed something more dynamic and entertaining to bring in all this exposition of this plan of escaping that Gil had. And we knew we had all this tiki stuff in the tank.
These 3 tiki heads are actual caricatures of Pixar employees. Andrew was very clear that he wanted this shot like we've never done before at Pixar, and so we used an extremely wide lens, which allowed us to get the camera really close to everything in the tank, and we're moving incredibly fast through a very small space, hitting very specific visual marks to tie in with the story. From a lighting perspective, the shot also presents a difficult challenge insofar as there are setups for inside the tank clean, inside the tank with algae, outside the tank in the air, outside the tank in the baggie moving, indoors and outdoors in several sets.
I'm always forced whenever we can, because for exactly what we're explaining, many times the actor will just do something you would never have expected for that line reading, and it will evoke imageries in your head that you would never have considered, or acting choices, visual acting choices that an animator would have never added to their plate had they not heard the way that line was read.
The fish behind them, that was a difficult challenge.
Technically, that is very, very hard and amazing for what they did. All those fish that you've seen are all really there, and they're all copying each other, and they're all slightly a little off of each other.
We used a tool called Pisces, which simulates the behavior of the fish. We would set up a bunch of basic parameters where the school would be, how fast it should swim, and then simulate and do iterations of that until we got something we liked. The number of fish that we would simulate would vary from 5 for a little small school on the reef to a couple thousand for some of the big hero schools and background schools. There was a lot of simulations where we would put a lot of fish in and then just kill the ones that were misbehaving. So basically, hundreds of CG fish died to make this movie.
Jellyfish, especially. As a Dave Reynolds line. I saw this amazing footage of all these jellyfish in Palau. And sadly, they don't exist anymore. I guess they've all died off as freshwater. But there's just these cameras moving through this forest of jellyfish, and it was just the most gorgeous yet creepy thing I've ever seen. The fact that something so beautiful could be so potentially deadly, I found that contradiction or that juxtaposition to be so engaging. That's a perfect sort of obstacle for Father to have to go through for getting not only closer to Nemo, but for sort of facing his fears.
And luckily, technically, it was an incredibly easy sequence to produce.
Oh yeah, it was just a breeze. It took about a week.
7 TDs left.
Actually, I think most of this stuff was over the counter. And it's called jellyfish. Jellyfish plug-in. No, there are still TDs that cry when they look at this, and it's not out of beauty. But
But it's gorgeous, and it was well, it was just, it is beyond what I think I hope it would look like, let alone what I thought it would do.
Well, we needed to figure out how jellyfish move for one, and that was kind of what this was all about. And this was also to figure out give them something to figure out all of the dynamics down below with.
We began by taking simple steers as standards for jellyfish and sprinkling them in the volume and pointing the camera that direction. We had no idea how complicated the path is going to be from that attempt at a simplistic view of the set to fully realizing the set with all the jellies moving all different directions, the camera flying through that 3 dimensions, with no reference for ground plane, ceiling, or walls, the characters interacting with the jellies being see-through, and the whole thing together became quite a messed up tangle. Quite
a Pandora's box, this little guy right here. But it was worth it because it's beautiful in the film. It's a beautiful scene.
Early on, before the movie was done, of showing how we could do refraction at the corner of the tank, just like in real tanks, we ended up getting a double image.
It was a really, really, really cool test.
And then,
however,
we were a couple months out, and we go, we never put that in the movie. Oh no!
One of the most important elements to make the tank look believable in the set that it was in was the use of reflections and refractions, looking from outside in and inside back out. Took both videotape footage, stuck our heads in tanks, stuck our heads outside tanks, and stared at the fish in the tank bed downstairs to really get a sense for how the image gets warped and distorted by the glass and water interface. The effect itself, the physics are well understood. To do it in computer graphics cheaply is hard, and especially to cheat it so we can control it, which is one of the key things about it. And so we weren't able to just duplicate physics directly. We need to put controls into adjust it and fudge it.
For me, I always remember my favorite teachers or counselors or coaches were the guys that sort of, you felt like you were being treated as an equal, that you weren't a kid that didn't understand things yet and sort of lay down to. And so I thought that's how Gil would treat Nemo. But the one danger is that you can put a kid at risk when you didn't mean to, when you're that loose with parenting.
Yeah, in a way, it's a very selfish thing for Gil to put him in there because he's putting the child's safety over his need to.
So often with little kids, especially kids that young, directing them is more a game of just literally chasing them around the room and trying to get them to even stand in front of the microphone, which is what we dealt with Mary Gibbs, who played Boo in Monsters Incorporated.
So young,
But Nick, he would just total pro. He would just stand at the mic and ask if, how he wanted a reading different. Do you want another take?
Yeah. So, and in the spirit of Director's Sons, I guess that's a good segue to that's my son right there doing the voice of that turtle passing on the information to the other fish.
And how cool is that?
I would have thought that was the coolest thing in the world. This was another really fun sequence. It just always worked from the beginning.
I love this one. That's you, Ritter.
Yeah.
You're just kissing up to him.
But just the visual sights of this is just the dolphins. So I'm actually a native of New England, and I couldn't let this movie finish without putting some insider references. Once we had come up with the rigging of the filter, it clicked with us one day to just not have the filter work, have Nemo try to go in again, and then have the news of his dad doing such truly courageous things motivate Nemo to actually do something courageous and have the guts to do it again, so that his dad could by example for the first time in his life for his son to do something challenging, yet do it from such a remote place and still get to his son. We just found that very moving. Every kid, I think, has, or at least every boy has a deep down desire to wish that their father was Superman, and that if the occasion rose, that their dad would do the right thing and save the day if the right circumstances came together. And I just think it kind of taps into that universal male longing, this moment.
Really? He's swimming, he's giving it all he's got, and then 3 gigantic sharks capturing him. He blows them up. Then his eye starts to make movements, chased by a monster with huge teeth.
And Tom Newman. Now, the EAC, which is the East Australian Current, truly exists. And he came to me with a bunch of stuff that he'd done research on about all the different currents that were there, and we found out that there truly was literally an underwater map that you could take from the Great Barrier Reef to get yourself to Sydney. And so we thought, well, let's just treat it like a highway. Let's treat it like I-5 is here in California, and all the different fish ride it and have to take exits and off-ramps off of eddies to get there. And eddies actually do swirl off, and they look a bit like always known about. Kind of slant on it,
Right.
and I thought she was going to like walk out if I asked her to do this, and I was amazed. She just kind of went, okay.
Yeah, we didn't even have to sort of do it for her. She's so smart. She knows what that's means.
She said her next door neighbor had whale sounds that she was always playing to relax, and so she knew. She just knew the vocabulary to do it. And she just did it right off the bat. It was amazing.
And full spectrum too, from the down to the high stuff, you know.
That was the way to play this gag at the end of the whale approaching.
For the longest time, it was coming at them.
From the front.
So it's coming from the front, and we finally thought, my God, it was working so well in that test. Let's just do that.
And for you geeks, if you see our first trailer, you actually see shots of the whale approaching from the front, because we actually made that decision after.
That should do it. And I just realized that we're being videotaped now. So, and when I say we, I mean me. So this is perfect.
It's actually hard for us to remember the actual flow sometimes of what was in the picture and when it came into the picture. Just when you go through so many iterations over the course of
It wasn't actually not that long ago. There wasn't a scene in the film where the tank got all mucky and full of algae.
And there was just this date on the calendar of when the dentist was going to clean the tank, and then the aquascum came in.
It just wasn't visceral enough. You weren't feeling it. It was too much information to track, so we finally decided that we should go ahead and let Nemo succeed at jamming the filter. Let it look like the plan was really working, because then they had that much further to fall when the dentist put in the aquascum.